Thank you everyone for joining today. Ron and I are really grateful for the opportunity to speak with you all. We're going to be going through this deck throughout the presentation today. So this was going to be the visual cue for the conversation. I know you all didn't join this call just to share icebreaker responses. So I wanted to, before we get started, talk through what our agenda is going to be today. We're going to start with a quick intro of myself and Ron. Then we're going to move into the meat and potatoes of the conversation. Talk specifically about what is Google advertising and why it should matter for your law firm, how your firm can set itself up for success with this advertising channel. We're also going to dig into tracking and reporting, how you can effectively measure and attribute performance of the Google Ads channel. And then we're going to touch on a best practices checklist. This will be something that you can walk away with at the end of the webinar if you are currently running Google Ads or you're planning to run Google Ads, to really grade yourself on how prepared you are to be investing in this channel. And then at the very end, the last 15 to 20 minutes, we are going to open the floor to Q&A. I would encourage everyone that's on the webinar today, if you have questions, drop them in the chat. We'll make sure to log them and come back to them towards the end. And Ron, please keep me honest. Please make sure that we stay on time today and we allow that last 15 minutes for questions.
You got it. Everyone, don't be shy. Throw us any questions, right? We're going to have some high-level stuff in here, strategic stuff. We're going to get a little bit of tactical as well. So if you've got any burning questions or even a specific question and you want to come up, we're happy to talk through that as best as we can.
So let's get started with quick intros. I'm Bo Royal, CEO of Pareto Legal. We are a digital advertising agency that specializes in law firms. My background, before I worked in legal marketing, I worked for eBay's Marketing Solutions division, where I was responsible for some of their biggest Fortune 500 clients. So long story short, I've been managing multi-million-dollar digital advertising budgets for the last 15 years, and I might know a thing or two about Google Ads. So
Ron Latz, I'm the founder of LegalFenix. LegalFenix is a consulting and fractional CMO operation. I've been in the legal industry for about a decade and a half. I worked for the largest or one of the largest legal marketing agencies and then helped rebuild a smaller boutique legal marketing agency. So a lot of my time with my consulting clients and fractional engagements are spent navigating kind of the intricate or sometimes complex landscape of all of these marketing vendors. So Bo is one of the great ones out there that really does right by his clients. That's why we've partnered up to talk through all this stuff. He holds no bars and tells you the real deal here. So we're excited to hit you with some brutal facts today and hopefully clarify any questions or myths that you might have run across with other agencies.
So let's dive right in with a very basic question first. What is Google Ads? When we say Google advertising, I want to make sure that there's a clear distinction today between Google Ads, which is Google's pay-per-click ad format, which I've included screenshots here. These are the ads in which you click through to the website, to a landing page. These are ads that are available on the Google search and display network. And display network is encompassing of YouTube, Gmail, and Google's 3 million plus partner websites versus Google local services ads, which I include in the screenshot here. So just to do like a breakdown of the anatomy of a search engine result page, for those of you that are looking to target lawyer, attorney, law firm keywords, and I imagine based on our audience, most of you are, if you were to do one of these searches, you're typically going to see at the top of the search result page a Google local service ad listing. And then below that, you're going to see the Google Ads listing. And so the fundamental difference with this format versus this format is Google local services ads are a pay per lead pricing model. So it's unlike Google Ads in which you pay per click. You can only serve these ads on the Google search result pages, and they typically will only serve for very high intent attorney, lawyer, law firm searches with or without local modifiers. So like the example here being accident lawyer Orlando, that would be an example of a local modifier on a keyword. The other difference is it's a completely different account and interface that you're going to need to set up if you want to run this ad format versus this ad format. And your business will need to provide documentation to validate to Google that you are in fact a real business. And because you're a lawyer or you're a law firm, you do need to provide documentation that verifies that you have a bar license in the state that you are looking to target. So I just wanted to take a step back, 1,000-foot view before we get started here, that for the purposes of this webinar, we're going to be focusing mostly on Google Ads, not Google Local Services ads. We will very likely be doing a webinar in the next few months that just focuses on this ad format.
One thing that I do think is important to know, Bo, here is the different levers and the capabilities that you would even have as an agency owner to impact the performance of either of these ad units. During today's call, Bo and I are going to talk through a lot of the different targeting, the matching, the phrasing, however we can improve the performance of the paid ads, right? Google AdWords, whereas your local services ads, you typically only have two levers to pull. You can increase the amount you're willing to pay per lead, or you can increase your budget, which, does provide some frustration given local services ads tend to be a little bit more volatile. But with the paid ads, we're going to talk through how we can maximize for impressions or clicks or placement on page, talk about the difference between branded and non-branded ads and different strategies to help you kind of funnel that type of traffic through. So just realize when you're talking with your agencies, wanted to make sure that they're accountable, that there's only so much they can do on either front.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification. So, why should your firm care about Google Ads? Why do companies in general funnel a big portion of their budget to Google advertising in the first place? In my mind, there are 4 key reasons. Number one, the targeting capabilities on Google Ads are unmatched. There is no other advertising platform that enables you to get in front of as warm of an audience as Google Ads, right? Because you have to think about it this way. When someone is conducting a search on Google, they're raising their hand and saying, I need help with this problem, right? And so the fact that they give you the ability to target keywords in the first place gives them such a leg up versus all of these other advertising formats like TV or Facebook or radio, right? Where Google enables you to get in front of that very warm audience that we know is looking for attorneys, or we know that needs a doctor after an injury, or we know that has some type of legal dispute that they're dealing with, right? So the targeting capabilities on Google, again, are unmatched. You can target based on keywords. You can target based on age, gender, household income. You can target based on interests, like what types of things does my target audience like? What types of content do they read online? You can target based on those different factors, as well as behaviors. Have they been to my website before? Have they had some prior interaction with my business before? All things that you can target with Google advertising. The other allure of Google Ads is the immediacy that you can expect from investing in this channel. Because you're able to get in front of such a warm audience with a click of a button, you can expect more leads, you can expect more traffic, more leads, and if done right, more cases much more quickly versus an advertising tactic like TV or direct mail, or doing, longer term tactics such as like SEO, right? So that's part of the allure for Google Ads as well. You also have the flexibility to be constantly making modifications to your Google Ads budget, right? It's not like a billboard campaign where you sign away a big portion of your budget, you get that locked in, and then you're basically running billboards for 12 months or for a quarter or for 6 months. With Google, you can pause your campaign, you can double the budget, tomorrow, today. You can chop down keywords, you can test new ads. It's very, very flexible. And I think that's another reason why businesses and law firms specifically like to invest in Google Ads. And then last but not least, this is a really important one, the trackability, the ability for you as a law firm to invest, a significant amount of budget into this channel and then confidently look back and say, I spent $50,000 on Google Ads last quarter, and of that $50,000, it was able to generate 100 leads, and of those 100 leads, 20 of them turned into a case, right? Google Ads is very unique in that it enables you to track with that level of precision. So let's actually talk about what the criteria are for setting up a successful Google Ads campaign. And I'm going to start with kind of a goofy analogy. I would make the argument that Google advertising, or any advertising for that matter, is the equivalent of pouring gasoline on a fire, right? It's very, you're going to get a picked up flame. You're going to get an immediate kind of boost from that investment. But the key thing here is, if you're going to be pouring that gasoline on that fire, you need to first make sure that you have the right logs in place. And I'm going to stick with this analogy for the next 15 minutes. But there are really 5 core logs of a successful Google Ads campaign. And I want to touch on each of these in detail today. The first is having clear goals. And we're going to talk about what that looks like. What is your specific objective with Google Ads? The next is measurement. How are you planning to measure against that objective? Messaging is equally important. How are you going to convey your firm's unique positioning and value relative to competitors? You need to really figure this out before you start making the investment. You also need to identify who your target client is. What does an ideal client look like to your firm? And then lastly, you need to think through the user experience, right? It's not just about generating clicks. It's about getting qualified leads. And that requires you to think through, after someone clicks on an ad, what am I having them do next, right? So this is just kind of an overview slide. We're going to get into each one of these specific logs in the going forward sections. So with goals, right? At the end of the day, there's really like 4 key things that you need to be tracking or looking at if you're making an investment in Google Ads. The first is traffic, right? Like you're giving Google a budget. You need to see some return in terms of the amount of clicks that you are getting to your landing pages, your website, so on and so forth, right? So that's kind of a front end metric you should be looking at. But as you make more and more investment and as time passes, you really need to be tracking leads, which in most cases are going to be some combination of phone calls, website form submissions, and or live chats if you have a live chat function on your website. Qualified leads, which are those leads that have the criteria that your firm is looking for, right? I would say qualified leads are based on the information that you have about the lead. There's a very high likelihood that it's a case that your firm wants to sign up, right? So you need to be tracking that as well. And then it goes without saying that the end goal here is to be tracking the number of cases that you are getting from this investment, right? So I pulled this from a client example. This is a client that we work with on motor vehicle accident cases. This was, these are basically the KPIs that we are using to track the efficacy of their Google Ads investment. Anything to add to this, Ron?
Yeah, this is why even the slide before is so important, because those factors was what you're talking about there, is how you're going to define success to hold that agency accountable, right? If you just say, I want more leads or I'm trying to generate more revenue, they're still kind of flying blind. But if you know exactly what your goal is with this ad, maybe you don't show up well enough organically for a particular type of accident case or a particular type of practice area. Google Ads, you can supplement your investment and try to target them through paid ads. Another thing, clients come to me and they talk about generating some of these cases at a specific cost per acquisition, or client acquisition cost, because they know that they've either exhausted funds on another channel or now they're moving to this type of channel. These are some of the things that you've got to keep in mind when you're talking to the agencies, so that they know what the target is for them to hit.
Exactly. And to kind of build off of what Ron just said, the key thing we're trying to drive home here in this goals section is that the more specific and intentional you are with your goals, the better that you can manage expectations with whoever is going to be running your Google Ads investment, right? And I give another example here. This is an actual goal setting exercise that we did with a client of ours, where we defined what their, a viable budget was for the market that they were looking to invest in. In this case, it was $30,000 a month to start. And then we backed into, based on their case acquisition target, which was they wanted to be signing up at least 12 new clients a month. We were able to back in to figure out, this is how many leads we need to be generating with that amount of budget. This is how many qualified leads we need to be generating with that amount of budget. And this is what our target cost per case is if we're going to be making this investment, right? So if you take anything from this section, you really have to know your numbers first before you go into this. And typically that's going to mean bringing on a few different stakeholders in the business. You might need to bring on your finance person to help answer the budget question, like, hey, how much can we afford to invest in marketing right now, or specifically Google advertising? And if we were to make this investment, what does a viable, acquisition cost need to look like? Those things are something that you can't rely solely on your marketing team for, your marketing partner. It is a part financial conversation. So it's really important to get this out of the way first, because I've seen this happen too many times where firms don't do their due diligence. They don't figure out the financial reality of their business and what they can afford in terms of an acquisition cost. They jump headfirst into Google Ads, and then a month or a quarter or a year passes, and they're like, oh my goodness, I just spent all this money. I got cases, but I'm breaking even on my Google Ads investment, or I'm losing money on my Google Ads investment, right? So think through these specifics. Make sure that you're going through this thought exercise with your marketing folks, your finance folks, and you're coming up with a game plan that isn't going to, crush your business, right? That it's important that this be something that is sustainable and something that, you can continue to run over the long term. Anything to add here?
Yeah, we should point out here, we have the timeline, right? It's not starting at 0, right? You show a range of 90 to 100 days. This is specifically also for if you've never run Google Ads and you're just getting into the game. You have to realize that Google's business model, they are in the business of maximizing revenue per impression. And if you have not proven to them that you are going to put dollars in their pocket, right, they are not necessarily going to be showing your ad as frequently as you may want. So yes, during those 30, 60, 90 days, right, through good ad copy, through optimized campaigns, you start to develop those initial impressions weeks 1 through 4, right? You start getting a little bit more consistent visibility in the ad placements. Then those impressions ultimately start to turn into clicks. Those clicks between weeks 4 and 8 will ultimately then start to convert into phone calls, chats, form fills, or text messages. And then ultimately, we're hoping that some of those clicks turn into the qualified leads and consultations, and ultimately a retained client. So Bo's talking about the unit economics here. We've got to be able to sustain this investment for this period of time in order for us to start seeing any of that type of return.
Yes.
Randy, yes, we are going to share the slides, but we did have a question here, Bo, as well from Michelle about how often that we should be calculating cost per case.
Yeah, it's a good question. I would say, because budgets are typically set at a monthly level, I would encourage you to be calculating your cost per case on a monthly basis, like going back and reassessing your investment every single month and saying, this is how many clicks I got, this is how many leads I got, this is how many qualified leads I got, and ultimately, this is how many cases I got from my investment, right? I think monthly is a really good starting point. You can do it more frequently if you'd like, but I think monthly is a really good cadence to be measuring that.
Especially if you've got fluctuations in your investment, or for example, like when you're looking at your client acquisition costs, depending upon your formula, I'm one to kind of say, you've got your Google Ads investment, you've got your ad management fee that you pay for your agency as part of your overall costs, and then landing page, design, copy. If you're going to be building out additional landing pages, those costs might fluctuate month over month, which will directly impact your acquisition costs and average cost per qualified lead. So if those things are happening, I think it has to be done at least monthly.
Agreed. So moving on to measurement, this is one where we see firms or marketing teams fall a bit short on. It's really important that you have the analytical infrastructure set up before you launch your campaigns, because if you don't, you're not going to be able to accurately determine how effective your advertising budget is performing, correct? So in terms of the things you need to be measuring, I already mentioned these KPIs, right? You need to be tracking the traffic, the leads, the qualified leads, and the cases. What I wanted to give more specifics on is, what does that mean in terms of actual metrics? And then what are the sources of truth for each of these data points, right? So on the traffic end, we highly encourage you to be tracking some combination of the impressions, which is the number of times that your ads have been served over a certain date range, the number of clicks that you were generating over a specific date range, and then the cost per the impression, and then the cost per click. And all of that data should be able to be pulled from the advertising engine itself, in this case, Google Ads. You can get all these metrics directly from the Google Ads interface. Next is going to be leads. And again, leads consist of calls, form submits, live chats, or if there's some other contact method that you employ on your website, make sure that that's something that you are tracking as well. And then you need to be looking at the cost per lead across all of these different lead types. It's really important that you be assessing that. And the sources of truth for these metrics are going to be, again, the advertising engine, in this case, Google Ads, Google Analytics 4, which is a free web tracking tool that Google allows all websites to use. You can install it for no cost. And then the third source of truth, I listed CallRail here. It's a call tracking analytics tool. But as long as you have some type of analytics tool that is measuring your call volume by marketing source, you check this box. But you need to make sure that you have that box checked, because that's another issue I've seen where firms they're just running, they're pushing traffic to a landing page that it has a form and it has a live chat, but they don't have a call option, or maybe they do have a call option, but they're not tracking the phone calls properly because they don't have a call tracking solution, right? So if you consider a phone call, a form submit, or a live chat a lead, you need to make sure that you are using these sources of truth to effectively track that. Qualified leads. We talked about this earlier. A qualified lead, again, by definition, is a lead that, based on the criteria that was submitted or that was captured during intake, your firm can deduce that it's probably a case, right? It fits the criteria that your firm uses to accept a case. The thing you need to be looking at when you're tracking qualified leads is the qualified lead rate, which is the number of qualified leads divided by total leads, right? So maybe historically, your firm's qualified lead rate has been 20%. That's a helpful benchmark to know before you start running a Google Ads campaign, because you might run a Google Ads campaign and the qualified lead rate is 1%. Then it's like, something seems off here. Maybe it's the targeting, maybe it's the landing page, maybe it's the messaging, but you need to be tracking this. The way that you're going to track this effectively, it's going to be using your CRM. So when you open up a case, or rather when a lead is generated and sent to your firm, where are you housing that lead information? Is it in a platform like Clio or Litify? And do you have some way that you are categorizing that lead so that your intake and your marketing folks know that, okay, out of these 100 leads, these 30 are actually pretty good? It looks like you want to say something, Ron. You want to add something real quick?
No, I'll wait off. We have a really good question, but I want to we'll wrap this up because it's very relevant to data, metrics, and access to that information.
Okay, perfect. And then the last thing is cases, right? Like, if you're spending all this money and you're not getting cases, it's not working. And this is the most important thing you need to be tracking. So KPIs that I really encourage anyone that's running Google Ads to be using is your conversion rate, right? Which is going to be the number of cases divided by qualified leads, your cost per acquisition, in this case, cost per case. So take your total Google Ads investment, include your agency fees in there. I encourage you to do that so that you're looking at everything baked in, and then divided it by the number of cases that you were able to open within that time period, whether it's a month or a quarter or a year. That's going to be your cost per case, right? And again, the source of truth for that is going to be your CRM, your case management system, wherever you are putting the leads and then transferring them into a case. That's going to be your source of truth for tracking this information. I know we got a question. Ron, do you want to ask the question out loud?
Below McGrath here. If your agency insists on running ads through its own Google Ads account, what data do you need to require it to provide you? So I feel strongly about this one way. Maybe, I think that you share some pretty similar feelings here, but I think it's all about expectation settings, right? First and foremost, whatever you can do to own all of your Google data, whether it's Search Console, Analytics, Ads, to be the administrative owner of that account is always going to be the best for you and your firm. Now, there are cases where other agencies are not going to allow you that administrative access. At minimum, you need to be able to see every single piece of data in the platform. If they are blocking you from that, it's my recommendation that there's a little bit of business misalignment here. There's a conflict of interest. They're kind of pulling the wool over your eyes. If you can't see how much you are paying per click, how much you're investing totally, how much your ad management fee. If there's no transparency there, I do think that you can consider other options. Now, as long as there are some firms that I've worked with that they've already been in the other agency's account, right? So like if they were to start their own account, they are starting from scratch. So sometimes they opt to go to an agency that already has that built-in quality score because they're running it from the agency account so that they can continue getting their clicks and cases and, all these other metrics that are still in alignment. You just have to know what you're getting into before you sign into that agreement. So my best practice, own all of it. If you can't, know what you're getting into so that when you do leave, you're not really surprised about a drop off of potential performance. But I'll let you weigh in because I know that you're behind the scenes there with the agency.
That was a very diplomatic response, Ron. I know you have strong feelings about this. I think it's like, I would chalk this up to be the equivalent of like, it's like paying for someone to build a house for you on land that you don't own, right? And they can kick you out of there whenever you want. And if you leave, like you have no asset that you're leaving with, right? So all this investment, all this setup that you're doing, all the measurement and the tracking you're doing, it's a gold mine of information for your firm long-term. And, God forbid, if you do need for whatever reason, part company with a marketing partner that has your account hostage, you're going to lose years of that data. And it's like starting from square one all over again. So I agree. Someone said total red flag if you don't own the Google account. I totally agree. It's a complete red flag. And the only other thing, not to get on a total tangent here, is, Google and Meta and TikTok, all these digital advertising platforms, they're essentially AI companies. And the reason I say that is they will only perform as well as the data that you feed them. And if you don't have ownership over that data, it's going to limit what you can generate from each of these platforms, right? So I really like it when I see firms have full ownership of their ad accounts, have full ownership over their data, so that if they do need to switch agencies or they need to make necessary changes to the marketing team, they're not forced to start from square one. Really good question. Thank you for asking it. Let's move on to messaging. Again, these are all logs of Google advertising. These are things that you need to figure out before you look to start making a significant investment here. So messaging is really important, right? It's the thing that your target audience is going to see in the search result pages. It's what they're going to see in their feeds. I highly encourage, before you start investing in Google Ads, do your competitor research. Look at your competitor websites. Look at their ads. Understand where are they investing currently in digital. And you can use tools like Ahrefs, SpyFu, SEMrush to get a sense of that. But if anything, I think the competitor research really helps you understand how firms are talking about their unique differentiators, what makes them, in the market, a better alternative versus the hundreds of other law firms there, right? And that really leads to my next point, which is if you can do that competitor research exercise, it'll put you in a good spot to really define what your firm's unique positioning and value propositions are, right? So value propositions would be things like, you're the only firm that has a doctor on staff, or you're the only firm that has this, or you're the firm with the most attorneys, or things like that have specific proof points, things that you can call out in the messaging. It's really helpful first to kind of look at what everyone else is using as their value props so that you can come up with yours. And that's what's going to be conveyed in the messaging, on the landing pages. And it can even make its way into intake, right? When someone calls into the firm and says, hey, I'm looking to work with a lawyer, make sure that those unique differentiators are being infused into that conversation as well.
Yeah, talking about competitors, Bo, right?
Yep.
If you're talking to your, law firm buddies or other people in your market, or you're in a mastermind and you're sharing information, and it's like, but Bo, his average cost per click is so much lower than mine. You have to compare apples to apples. How long have they been running the ads? Like, how aggressive are they? Like, do they have all the pieces in place in order to service all of those leads, right? Are they servicing them well? It's not just about like how much we are paying per click, right? Sometimes there is an argument to be made that you want to pay a elevated cost per click because you're going after a more qualified searcher,
Right.
someone that has higher intent. So just when you're having those conversations, it's always good to get a baseline. You're going to share information about what you're paying for your management fee or how much it costs you to build the landing page. But when you start looking at the performance data and understanding conversion rates, average cost per clicks and leads and acquisition costs, you just got to have as much context as possible to make sure that you're comparing the same thing, because many times it's misleading. Some people might be at mile marker 23 of the race. You might have just jumped off the starting line. So you've just got to keep that in mind as well.
The other thing I'm going to say too about, messaging your firm, this is something that you can and should be continuously testing. With Google Ads, you can run A/B tests very easily. And, if you don't know what the right, service features or value propositions are that you should be calling out on your website or in other marketing mediums, A/B test that. Test some hypotheses. Oh, I want to call out that I have the most reviews of any personal injury lawyer in this market. Great. Let's build an ad. Let's start testing that versus the current variant that's running. The point is, you need to maintain a test and learn mentality as it pertains to your messaging, because there can be very minor tweaks that you make to an ad or a landing page that can really unlock more leads, more qualified leads, and ultimately more cases if you figured that out. I just want to call out too, I found this example, and I actually tried to contact this firm to let them know it was happening. This is an example of misaligned ad messaging. For those of you that can see the screen here, I typed in the keyword best personal injury lawyer NYC. This firm popped up, and they're a maritime injury lawyer. That's not very relevant to what the keyword stated, right? So if anything, you need to make sure that the keywords that you are targeting, the ads that are going after those keywords, need to closely tie to the keyword that's being typed in, right? If someone's typing in personal injury lawyer NYC, that ad headline needs to say personal injury lawyer NYC. If someone's typing in car accident attorney Atlanta, Georgia, you better believe that ad headline, those description headlines, need to convey that keyword in the ad. I think we're quick time check. We're at the 36-minute mark, so 10 more minutes, Ron, and then we'll get into more questions.
On pace.
Okay, perfect. This is a big slide. So I want to talk about the targeting now. So I recommend that if you are investing or planning to invest in Google Ads, that you segment your Google Ads campaigns based on the different stages of the client journey, from awareness all the way down to lead stages. And the reason that it's beneficial to do this is that it will enable you to initially prioritize your advertising budget on higher intent, warmer traffic. And then once you figure out how to make that traffic work and you're profitable with it, you can then move further up the funnel and go after colder audiences and bring them into your funnel. So I'm going to be I'll be more precise here. So an example of a lead campaign would be targeting your branded keyword, right? So if you're ABC law firm, you should be running a campaign that targets the keyword ABC law firm. Now, why would you do that? Well, if you don't do that, you're going to open the door for some of your competitors to go after that keyword too. So we typically recommend that you do that as a defensive measure to ensure that all of your branded traffic, someone typing in ABC law firm or, ABC law firm NYC, you're capturing that real estate, you're bringing them onto bringing that onto your website, and you're converting them into a lead. Because if you don't, you're going to give your competitors an opportunity to do that. And I see it far too often. Another example,
competitive market than South Carolina, where other firms are bidding on other competitors. So especially if you're a firm that's got a lot of out-of-home billboards, bus wraps, bench stuff, right? If it's easy and your name is out there, other firms, depending upon bar association rules in every given state, you do have the ability to bid on that competitor's name. So if you're not protecting your own name and your own investment, there will be firms out there that try to dam that demand and siphon those clicks to their firm in the hope to capture a conversion. So just take a look at it, right? You could see it in the ad platform. If you've got a branded ad campaign, I know that there's some competitive insights that you could take a look at. Just make sure that you've got a pulse on that, because that's a defensive play that you do not want to miss out on.
Agreed. The other lead campaign example I'll give would be like a retargeting campaign. So serving ads to people that have had some prior touch point with your website or with your business. And these are going to be typically very low volume, right? Because you maybe only get a couple thousand site visitors a month, or maybe you get more than that, but it's a much more limited audience pool because you're only going after, again, people that have made some interaction with the business before. Those would be examples of very bottom of funnel campaigns. And my point here is, I think a lot of firms need to work their way bottom up. I've seen firms do the opposite, where they see some other competitor, oh, they're running this YouTube campaign, we need to be running YouTube now. Or, oh, hey, I heard their radio spot, we need to be doing radio now. You don't know all the other tactics that they're doing to make that one tactic work. And the reality here is that all of these different tactics, all of these different campaigns, if done properly, they help one another. They accentuate one another. And I like to think of it as, again, this funnel example, you're a consideration campaign or awareness campaign. The goal of that is to bring cold traffic into the funnel. And it's not to convert them into a lead right away, right? If someone doesn't even need a lawyer right now, do you really think you're going to get them to turn into a form submit on your website once they see one video of yours on YouTube? That's not the way it works. It's not the point of the campaign. So I'm not going to go through every single one of these tactics, but my point here again is you need to segment your campaigns based on where people are in the user journey. And I've given, we will share this deck at the end of the webinar today. I give you specific campaign types that fit within each kind of segment of the funnel, right? Non-branded lawyer search campaigns, I've listed here as an intent type campaign. That's very straightforward. That would just literally be going after lawyer, attorney, law firm keywords, right? Like that's its own campaign, very high intent keywords, and that deserves its own budget, its own segmentation, so on and so forth. Versus again, like a YouTube campaign, you need to grade these things differently. They need to be segmented out from each other, and you can't just run, all these different types of tactics and then expect all of them to perform within a certain cost per lead or cost per case. It's not the way it works.
So practice area dependent, because that customer's journey, some of them have much longer research periods, right? Someone's get pulled over because they've gotten a DUI, you're right? They have very high intent because they need to speak with an attorney almost immediately. So a little bit similar with personal injury as well. But ones that have longer phases where the consumer is doing a lot more due diligence, especially things like employment law. Maybe they don't understand, like, are they being harassed? Are they being discriminated against? You can find that's a great area where retargeting is great, because you're nurturing that individual, providing them with information about the potential situation that they're running into. Estate planning, longer research, family too. I would just caution, just be careful with some retargeting on family law. That's a decision that your firm's going to make, whether or not you want to serve someone a family law ad if they've interacted with your site. You could get into some hot water if the spouse doesn't know, and then they use a shared laptop, and out of nowhere they're getting served divorce ads. You don't want to be the firm that has that spouse come after and say, hey, this firm is proactively trying to get my spouse to divorce me. That's the last Google review that you need. So it's very practice area dependent, depending upon how long that research phase actually is.
A couple more best practices for targeting. I wanted to include this slide because I've seen a lot of accounts that aren't doing this properly. There are 3 primary match types that you can target in a Google Ads search campaign. You can go after exact match keywords, which will enable you to target search queries that match the meaning of the keyword, very closely. You can go after phrase match keywords, where the search query must include your keyword's meaning. And you can run broad match, where the search query must relate to your keyword. The TLDR here, the long story short of this slide is, if you're running with initially a limited budget on Google Ads, like a smaller budget, you really should only be running exact match keywords, or exact with some slight allocation towards phrase. In most cases, you really shouldn't be running broad match at all. Broad match is the equivalent of telling Google, hey, as long as this, search query has the slightest bit of relevance to the keyword that I'm suggesting we target, go ahead and serve my ad. And if you actually look at the reports after spending a couple grand on a broad match keyword, you'll see the amount of relevant queries that are popping up. So like, this is for those of you that are running Google ads right now, like, if you're running broad match, you probably need to be adding tons of negative keywords to siphon out all of the irrelevant stuff that's popping up in your reports and that you're wasting budget on.
Question.
Another targeting. Yeah, go ahead.
Is that what the Maritime guy's doing?
In that example, that's a good question. He's probably going after personal injury lawyer, phrase, or broad match. Right. And that's why his ad is popping up. So this is a perfect example of someone that's using match type strategy incorrectly and not using enough negative keywords. Great question. Other quick targeting best practices. I mentioned this at the beginning of the call. Google, unlike any other platform, has some of the most amazing targeting capabilities. You can target based off of Google standard segments, which I've listed here: age, gender, household income, parental status. You can target based on affinity. So what types of things are they interested in? What types of things do they like? You can target based on things that they are in the market for. So if someone, let's say you're a lemon law attorney, right? And you want to go after people that are in the market for a new vehicle. You can do that with Google advertising campaigns. And life events too. You can target people, if they've just recently got married or they just recently had children. Google has all of this data on their users. They have millions of data points on each and every one of us. And these are the types of things that you can tap into and overlay onto your campaigns. Other things that you can overlay, you can target based on people that have viewed your website. If you have an app, you can target people based on that. You can target your YouTube subscribers. You can target your existing customers. You can also target based on keywords that people recently searched for, right? So maybe you have a limited budget, let's say, and you're a small personal injury firm, but you don't have enough budget to go after like those really big $300 to $400 best personal injury lawyer near me keywords, right? What you could do is create a search term based custom segment audience and put a bunch of personal injury lawyer keywords in there, and then run a YouTube campaign to people that recently searched for personal injury lawyer or personal injury lawyer near me. And it's like kind of a way to hack and go after people that are in the market for you without having to pay for that really prohibitive high cost per click on the keyword itself, right? So that's just one example of how you can use a search term based custom segment that I've shown here into your campaigns, into your strategy. I know we're almost at
the landing page.
Yeah, please. Oh yeah,
no, right. We should probably keep. Yep. Yeah, we got a couple more here.
Yep. So for landing page best practices, you've probably heard some of these before, but I think it's important to reiterate. You need to design your pages with a mobile first mentality. If you were to go and look at any of your website traffic, I guarantee you the majority of your traffic is coming in through mobile devices, right? So when you're looking at the user experience of your landing pages, you need to be looking at it mobile first to make sure that your forms are working properly, that all the necessary text and features of the landing page are rendering and loading properly, right? So approach your pages with that mobile first mentality. You need to have clear calls to action, right? So if you want people calling you, make a call to action that says, call us now, please call us today, things of that nature. And then I recommend at least 2 contact methods. I would say bare minimum, you need to have phone calls as a functionality there, like preferably click to call functionality, where if they're on their mobile device, they can literally press one button and automatically initiates the call. And then allowing one additional contact method, whether it's web form or live chat, in the event that maybe they can't talk right now. Maybe they're on the bus, maybe they're in a movie theater, maybe they're at the hospital and they can't talk right now. You need to give them another contact method so that they can still get in touch with you, even if they can't talk right now, right? You need to make sure that your landing pages, the headlines, the body content very closely matches the intent of the keywords you're targeting, right? I see this one all the time where, a personal injury lawyer or a medical malpractice attorney, they have this big Google Ads budget and they're pushing all this traffic and they're landing it on their homepage. And it's like, they go after multiple practice areas. The homepage doesn't speak specifically to that keyword that's being targeted. And the problem with that is, number one, your bounce rate's going to be higher than you want it to be, because people are going to land there and be like, well, this isn't what I searched. I'm not going to go any further on this page. The other thing is, Google actually rewards advertisers that provide a very relevant user experience. And the way they do that is based on something called quality score. So quality score is a function of the relevancy of your ads and your landing pages to the keywords that you're targeting. And if you are making sure that your ad and your landing page is very relevant to the keyword you're targeting, Google's going to reward you with a higher ad position and a lower cost per click. So if that's not incentive enough, I don't know what is. But long story short, make your landing pages super relevant to the keywords you're targeting. I have here incorporate value propositions. We talked about that earlier in the call. Make sure that your unique differentiators are just clear as day on your landing pages. Make sure that you're pulling in client reviews. There, for those of you that have a high Google review count, there are widgets. If you have a WordPress site, you can install onto your landing pages that dynamically pull in your review counts, show your recent reviews, so on and so forth. If you have video testimonials, incorporate those on your landing pages, because no one's going to sell your firm better than a happy client, right? Another key thing here, increase your landing page speed. There are so many studies that have been done over the last decade about the incremental benefits to having a faster loading landing page. I think the most recent one Google said is, at every second extra that your page loads, that's like another 20% decrease in conversion rate, right? So again, if that's not incentive enough, I don't know what is. Make sure that your landing pages are loading lightning quick. And then the last thing here, this is very similar to what I said about the ad testing. You need to be constantly testing your landing pages. This is another area I think a lot of Google advertisers fall short. Google Ads is good at bringing people onto your website, onto your landing pages, but the landing pages are the thing that ultimately convert people into clients, right? It's not the ad, it's not the targeting, it's what are you feeding them? What are you landing them on after they click on the ad, right? So my point here is always be testing, always try to experiment with different layouts, make copy adjustments, and build your landing pages in an iterative type of process, right? You're never going to be fully done. There's always little things that you can tweak to get better leads and more cases.
This one comes from Michelle here. What is your recommendation around siloed landing pages? My landing pages seem to work best when they are part of the website.
In my experience, that tends to be the case as well. The caveat though is, what is your site built on? Like, is it going to enable you to spin up landing pages fairly quickly? Is it going to require a lot of development work? But I agree with Michelle. I typically like paid landing pages that are built on the website CMS that have the same look and feel as the actual website. But I've also seen instances work where a siloed PPC landing page can work as well. But if I had my preference, I would run landing pages using the actual website.
Their current CMS.
If for whatever reason their current CMS can't give them a rock solid paid landing page, meaning a landing page for paid media efforts, then you probably are better off, using, a landing page builder or getting a separate, page built with a different look and feel.
Yep. Great.
I know
we have about like 7 left here, so there's about 1 or 2 more slides which we think are valuable. We do want to get this, but any questions, throw them in the chat, throw it in the QA. We've got some takeaways here. Go ahead, Buck.
Yeah, I'd like to, because we're already at, we have 7 minutes left. I'd like to end on this slide. I think there's a lot of good recap and like action items that people can take from this final slide. I set this up to almost be like a score, like grade yourself if you're already running Google Ads or if you're not running Google Ads. But I think these are like the key criteria if you want to get your most bang for your buck from a Google advertising investment, right? And we talked about these at length, Ron. The first and foremost is you need to make sure that your firm's intake and operations are rock solid. We use the term flawless here. I mean, flawless is like the ideal, but like you need to make sure that if you're going to be making this investment in Google or any other advertising or marketing effort, that your firm can effectively convert the leads that you're generating into cases, and that your ops team is adequately prepared from a process perspective and from a staffing perspective to handle any influx in cases that your firm generates. And again, this is something that I've seen firms put the cart before the horse, and they're like, oh, I want to generate more cases, I need to start spending more in marketing. It's like, well, not necessarily. If you can be 20% more effective in your intake process, that could mean the difference of an incremental 10 cases a month right there. We're talking about an average case value of $10,000. That's an extra $1.2 million a year in top line revenue that you just generated. And you didn't have to spend a dime. All you had to do was make your intake a little bit more efficient, right? So make sure that you take inventory on these things before you pull out your checkbook, before you take out your credit card and tell yourself, oh, I just need to start spending in Google Ads. In some cases, you probably need to do some work on the actual business first before you do that.
Yeah, if you've got capacity or bandwidth issues, hold off before you start throwing $15,000, $20,000 into ads. If you don't have something like dynamic call tracking software in place through CallRail, call tracking metrics, what converts, anything like that, and your phone call answer rate is in, 95% plus, and you're missing 15, 20% of your phone calls, the last thing you want to do is spend more money. All you're going to be doing is investing in poor first impressions at scale. If they can't answer the phone competently and give them the information they need to schedule the consult, right? If you don't treat them well, like this is the first impression that these individuals get when interacting with your firm. And if intake is not satisfied there, keep those hard-earned dollars in your pocket, get that all on lock, and then you can make your investments.
Agreed. For everyone that's still tuning in, we are at the Q&A section. We're still just going through this because we haven't gotten any other questions yet. But if you do have any more questions, we're happy to answer them over the next 4 minutes. But for now, we'll continue on our spiel here. So the next thing, we already talked about this. You need to have your goals, your key performance indicators, and budgets defined and approved by the stakeholders in your law firm. We mentioned the marketing, finance, and operations functions in the firm. We just got a question. Do you work mostly with law firms that use outside digital marketing agencies, or have seen any success in law firms who have brought digital marketing in-house? Any insight for long-term marketing strategies here? Ron, you want to take this one?
Yeah, I mean, if it's specifically related to ads, I do believe that like the firms that I've worked with have found that to be quite challenging, right? Because in order to find the individual that is of caliber to perform and drive the results that you want, so for paid ads specifically, I've seen it work with, very big firms that can have that department and afford to pay someone that's got the 5 to 7+ years of experience to make that a successful campaign. In most cases, right? Unless you're investing, we're talking 6 figures plus into ads, where your ad management fee to pay to the firm is in excess of $7,000, $8,000 a month, where then you can afford to pay someone like a Bo, whatever, $100,000 to $150,000 a year, paid ads monthly, right, or yearly. No, I was talking about like the firms, like there's some firms, for example, in Texas, in the Panhandle area. There's some firms in LA. There's firms in Florida where they're spending like $100,000 to $200,000 a month, right? So like the ad management fee there is significant. It can justify the expense of bringing on a full-time employee or a marketing director or someone that can kind of manage those campaigns on your behalf. When you're sub 6 figures there, and you've got to do the cost benefit analysis, like how much am I going to pay this individual? How much is like, what are my average acquisition costs? What are my average cost pers on my ads campaign, to see if that makes sense for you. It can be done, but I do think that it can be pretty challenging because it is a very focused and it's a specialty.
Agree.
You run into that, Bo?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen instances where some combination of in-house plus agency works really well, where you have maybe like a more marketing generalist that is, the main point of contact for multiple specialist agencies. I've seen that model work really well. But to your point, Ron, It's contingent on how big the firm is, how big their budget is. So it's different solutions for different types of firms, right? For smaller firms, they're probably not going to be able to afford that in-house person, so they probably need to outsource it and just have that sole person do it. But it's a really good question. I do want to jump to the end real quick. I know we're almost at time. First off, thank you everyone for tuning in today and joining. I really appreciate it. So to kind of end this, basically, just a reminder, I'm CEO of Pareto Legal. We are a growth advertising agency for law firms. For everyone that joined the podcast or webinar rather today, I wanted to let you all know that if your firm is spending $20,000 or more per month on digital ads, we are offering a complimentary assessment from our team. It's typically valued at $1,000. So if you fit that criteria and you're interested in having us come in and look under the hood and give you some recommendations for how you can generate more cases, we're happy to do that. And then Ron, if you want to give a quick kind of ending note here.
Yeah, and we thank you, Michelle, for the kind words. The connection between Bo and I is just being in the industry. I was actually working and helping a smaller boutique legal marketing agency. There were some clients there, and I had reached out to Bo because we were conflicted in some markets, and I always felt like he did a great job, specifically within legal, because that's where I focus on. So that connection flourished into a friendship, and now we're just kind of we're partnering. So thank you very much. We appreciate the feedback here. Same thing, I offer a free alignment call. If you're unsure what's going on with your marketing, if you don't know what's happening, who's doing what, when it's supposed to be done, or you just need a little bit of direction in navigating that vendor landscape, I'm happy to offer a free alignment call to see if I can help you out. But thank you, everybody. We really appreciate this.
Yes, and as a reminder, we're going to be sending the webinar presentation that we went through today to each of you individually. We will also be posting this recording on YouTube probably in the next week or so. And if any of you have any questions, you'll be able to contact both Ron and I via email. And yeah, what Ron said, thank you all for joining today. We know that you're all very busy people. We appreciate the hour, and we look forward to seeing you all on the next webinar we do.
Thanks for all the support.
Thanks all. Bye-bye.